everybody. My name is Christine Schrader-Morin. I'm the Lifelines Program Director at Friends for Life. Lifelines is actually a new program that we've developed. It's actually only been in existence for about 7 months now. Lifelines provides care consultations, care coordination, information, referral. Sometimes I will do public speaking. Sometimes I will have experts come in the community and host events like this. So lots of different roles like that. Also, we are integrating scam, fraud, and exploitation into my role. And so helping people regarding prevention and intervention and, examining things and then seeing if it's prosecutable and things like that. So that's a little bit about my role at Friends for Life. Friends for Life is huge. We have 7 different programs, and all geared towards helping people that typically fall between the cracks. And so some of our most vulnerable populations are elderly and adults with IDD or children with IDD. And so a lot of the focus is there, but then again, in my role in Lifelines, I get calls from anybody needing help at any age with any topic. So it's huge. So that's just a little bit about Friends for Life. Would love to have you learn a little bit more about some of the different services that we provide, different ways that you can volunteer. Of course, we are a nonprofit organization. There is not any funding for a lot of the programs that we do offer. And so we're always looking for grants and donations and things like that. I want to not forget, I want to thank you to the church for hosting this for us free of charge. A lot of churches do want to charge us, even though we're also a nonprofit. So really, really appreciative of Reverend Sherry, the office staff, and the church congregation as a whole for allowing us to use this wonderful meeting place. And we really appreciate that, being neighbors here. So if you see anybody on the way out, tell them thank you so much for letting us have this here. Now I want to go ahead and introduce Jaylyn. Jaylyn, yay, is the business development person.
Director of Business Development.
Director of...
I'm just me.
It's just me. Jaylyn, and she's with Cedar Crest. We've known each other for, we've decided,
15 years?
Yeah, so long time in different roles, but trust each other completely regarding services that we're providing in the community. Sure. She agreed to provide lunch for you guys and a couple of door prizes. Yay, yes,
Yay.
Thank you, Jaylyn.
So I won't take up much time because I know Natalie's got some great information, but just so you guys kind of understand my background, for several years I was in the assisted living, memory care, hospice field. I worked with families, so basically with the elderly, the ones that are struggling with Parkinson's, the ones that struggle with Alzheimer's, had some patients that had IDD, things along those lines. And about 5.5 years ago, I switched over into mental health. So I've been doing basically presentations, marketing on mental health, things like anxiety, depression. Those are the 2 most common we're gonna see with pretty much every age group. Those are pretty much the 2 most common mental health disorders we have in our population, from child and adolescents all the way through geriatrics. So I know Natalie's going to provide some great information today. I am somebody who struggles with anxiety on a daily basis, so I have a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. That's one of the conversations we were just having is, it ebbs and flows. There are times where your anxiety, you feel like you're out of control, you don't know why you're feeling a certain way. We laugh all the time because I tell everybody when my anxiety is at its highest, either I'm an emotional mess or I'm going to make you an emotional mess. Those are my 2 levels, right? I'm either crying uncontrollably and I can't get regulations over my emotions, and I don't know why. Sometimes it can be something very minor that sets me off. And then I can just be ugly to people I really care about. And I don't like to be that way. So I know she's going to provide y'all some great information on that today. If you've got any additional questions on anxiety or mental health resources or things that are available like in the community, then I'll be around and you guys can kind of hit me up afterwards. But I do want to go ahead and kind of let that go and turn over into letting her share some information for you guys on why you're feeling this way.
Thinking errors.
Thinking errors.
Long thinking that we do.
Yeah.
All right.
So thank you so much, Jaylyn. Jaylyn is going to also I've got a little resource table over on the side here. It has a little bit of literature about Friends for Life, some upcoming events. I do want to highlight those real quick at the end. Also something from Waco PD about Take Me Home project that they have for anybody who has a loved one who may actually wander or, you know, somehow get lost, whether it be an adult with an IDD diagnosis or somebody with dementia. Can be really, really helpful if that's even a remote possibility to go ahead and take advantage of that. Some other upcoming things and the door prizes. Natalie's gonna put some of her cards. Natalie, I'm looking at Jaylyn and I'm thinking, Natalie, you are gonna put some of your cards on the table as well. Natalie has some of hers there. This is Dr. Natalie Oliver. We have known each other for, I think we've decided about 22 plus years.
Can just say 20 years.
And yeah, 20 plus. Have worked together in a lot of different capacities and enjoy doing a lot of things together. Have the same mindset about helping people. Education is sometimes so important. So I'm not going to take up any more time other than I'm just wondering if those of you that are here, is anybody here because they are caring for a loved one or have experience or are somehow connected to somebody with a dementia diagnosis of any kind? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. How about another adult illness like stroke, heart disease, Parkinson's?
Oh, Parkinson's.
Oh, quite a few with Parkinson's. Okay. And along with that, a lot of times we see Lewy body dementia, right? As well. So that's also in the dementia family. Anybody here with a loved one who has some kind of an IDD diagnosis?
Or any mental health
Or
diagnosis.
any kind of bipolar, schizoaffective, anything
What is
like that.
IDD?
Intellectual disability disorder.
Yeah. So anybody with an intellectual or developmental disability. So
It's the now politically
Got
correct term for mental retardation.
yeah, yes. So IDD.
Got it.
Sorry, I
Got
should
it.
have clarified. Thank you. I'm glad you asked that. So I want to go ahead and get started because we do want to be respectful of your time. And certainly we have two, not just one, but 2 door prizes to draw for at the end. So if you haven't put your name in for the door prizes, please do so and make sure that you've given us your contact information before you leave. Natalie,
Okay. Will you tell me when I have like 2 minutes left?
2 minutes left. I will tell you. I will set a timer.
Professors, we talk a lot. Hi, I'm so excited to be here. A couple things. Do not stress about taking notes because I'm going to send this PowerPoint to Christine in PDF form and then she can mail it out to all of you. You are welcome to use this information. I got it off the internet. You can use it and share with others and educate them. So anyway, but we are really cognizant of time, so keep me in line. I'm in higher ed, so we have to have a lot of names. I mean, a lot of letters past our name. We're obnoxious. That's what we are. But the main thing is the DSW is a doctorate in social work, a clinical social worker, and then I have an MSG that's a Master's of Science in Gerontology, the study of aging. I love 65 and over. I don't like under 18. So I just know where God called me, and He called me for older adults. Okay, if you'll click it.
Oh, I guess that's me.
I don't have a clicker.
Oh, maybe. There it goes.
Okay, this is just a little bit about me, so you know who the heck is up here talking to me, acting like she knows some stuff. But you know, we have a lot of experts in here. You're experts because you're living with someone who's going through different things. Christine, Jaylyn, and I have been in the field for a long time. All of us have presented on these types of topics. But this just kind of tells you, I have worked. I worked with the Area Agency on Aging for a while, where caregivers could go and get free counseling through me, and they would pay me. So I did that for a while. I worked with a forensic psychologist. I worked at DePaul when DePaul was open, inpatient, outpatient. Did anyone ever hear of Senior Gateway? I ran that for a while. But anyway, so I've done therapy with 65 and up or 18 and up. But that's just so you kind of know who is this person. This is just a summary of why you're here, which was on the marketing. This right here, I always love to start with numbers because not to memorize numbers, I don't even memorize them, but because it's important to know why are we talking about what we're talking about and how impactful is it. So right now, according to ARC, we have 38 million caregivers. And how many of y'all are caregivers? Yeah. And then it talks about how it's unpaid. And many of them are working still. Okay, next. And then I like to break it down for Texas. Texas, we have 3.4 million caregivers right now. So this stuff is important. And, you're probably going to relate to some thought processes that you have from what we talk about today. Okay? So I love this definition from the World Health Organization. What it's saying is that health is not just physical health. Health is our emotional health and our physical health. And I think we're slowly breaking the stigma and the barriers, but I'm 50. Back in my day, definitely didn't talk about it, or before that, but my students now, they, tell me everything. But, and so the main thing is here is that we need to look at it, and we need to look at it for all ages, like Jalen was talking about. Mental health hits all ages. Okay? And then here, again, not to ever memorize numbers, but just to see the impact. We know, research says 1 in 5 adults has mental health. They may not be diagnosed, but they're living with mental health issues. 1 in 5. And again, some of the people that are 50 or over, it's not as easy at times to talk about it. But if you see these numbers and you know someone or you have it, you can go, I'm not alone. I see how much it impacts others. So you can see 48 million American adults are living with an anxiety disorder. That's the #1 mental health diagnosis. So that's what we're talking about. Okay. And this right here just tells you globally, around the whole world, 1 in 13 adults lives with anxiety. It's real. It's not just I'm too stressed. It's not, oh, take a hot bath and you'll be okay. And so it is real, and we're going to talk about it, okay? I love visuals. I found these pictures years ago, and I use them all the time for my visual learners. People that don't understand mental health, sometimes when you see a picture, it clicks. This right here is anxiety. This is what a panic attack is, what someone's going through when they're having a panic attack. All over the place, and if you're telling them, oh, just calm down, that's not going to work. This over here is another huge thing people with anxiety have. I have the weight of the world on me. I'm caring for my loved one. Now I'm in charge of the bills. Now I've got my own health. Now I've got the grandchildren. I mean, all this weight is on your shoulders. Okay? What triggers anxiety? These are some of the most common ones. First of all, health issues. If you have chronic illnesses, we know that some chronic illnesses, medical conditions, make you more prone to have mental health ones. Like I know my mom is a heart patient, and years ago we learned in the literature, she didn't accept it for a long time, but that heart patients a lot of time have depression. And so we just know, science tells us that there is a lot of correlation there. Medications, sometimes those over-the-counter ones or those ones you're buying on TV that they promise all these things, it really could trigger some of those chemicals inside of you and make anxiety a lot worse. And these are some of the most common ones: birth control, cough and congestion, weight loss medications as well. Okay? Caffeine. How many knew caffeine makes your anxiety worse? It was so that I just thought that was common knowledge, but I remember my students when I was teaching in person. Now everything's online. But in person, they'd have like their big Route 44 like me, and they're like, I'm so nervous, I'm about to present. I'm like, then don't drink caffeine. Caffeine makes your anxiety worse. And so just be careful with that. And it talks about if you have 5 cups of coffee, it increases the likelihood that you are going to have some of those symptoms. Skipping meals, which we could do a whole training on how important food is and how it helps with our mental health. And it's not just about vanity, and it's not just about weight loss. It really helps with our mental health. And it took me to age 50 to start really practicing what I preach. So now I really am being more, intentional with what I'm eating, because it really does affect my mood and my marriage. So it really does help. And it helps me as a caregiver. One thing I forgot to share with you is that my parents moved in with my husband and I in 2021 because my dad has dementia. He's, you can say middle stage, has been there for a long time, and it was too much for my mom to take care of. And so they moved in with us. So I took all this theory that I talked about and I put it into practice. Oh my gosh. I have a therapist now, so if that tells you anything.
A lot harder to do than to say.
It really is.
Yeah.
Other things that trigger anxiety is stress. If you are living with chronic stress, you can get to where you can meet the symptoms and be diagnosed with anxiety. So just know it. We have eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S. That's good stress. That gets us kind of motivated to do things. Not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about all those stressors we have as caregivers, as people in life. Remember, 1 in 5 adults has a mental health issue. Negative thinking. You'll hear a lot of literature about this. What you say in your mind, those thoughts that come up in the morning. Oh, I'm a horrible caregiver. Oh my gosh, I didn't go see mom today. Oh, I didn't do this. All those thoughts that come in, they come all throughout the day to all of us. That can really increase our anxiety if we don't know what to do with them. Okay? I want to go over some common symptoms of anxiety. These are the mental and behavioral symptoms. First one is obsessive thoughts over and over. Over and over, those ones where you can't sleep at night. Rumination, that's the term you might hear. Yeah, rumination, over and over. Reactions that are disproportionate to the triggering event. So if something that a typical person would respond, oh, and we're like, oh my God, that's kind of disproportionate. That's what we're talking about. Restlessness, I just can't relax. Anyone there? I just can't stop. I just can't stop. Trouble with memory or focus. So don't always, and don't always assume because you're a certain age that, oh my gosh, I must have dementia. Because there are so many different things that can be causing memory issues and distraction. Anger, irritability, aggressiveness, insomnia, or nightmares. Any of y'all have those recurring anxiety nightmares? I have them. It's crazy. Whenever I'm stressed about something, I'm always in college and I'm on campus as a student. I'm trying to get to the class and I can't figure out where it is. So we all have a lot of times those reoccurring dreams.
Dr. Oliver?
Mm-hmm.
So, like with the, you're talking about the recurrent dreams and things like that. And when you were talking earlier about obsessive thoughts, somebody at work was just actually saying, they woke up, they'd fallen asleep, but then they woke up, and then they couldn't turn their brain off. So is that too?
Oh, yes.
What you're,
Yeah, I've done that before. Have any of y'all done that where you're having that anxiety dream, you wake up, you go back to sleep, and you pick back up?
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about some coping skills. Uncontrollable feelings of panic, fear, apprehension, ritualistic behaviors. And it may not be to the OCD point, but it may be I've always got to do this, or I've got to check whatever a couple times. Okay? Next. These are some of the physical symptoms: dry mouth, racing heart, trembling, hot flashes. Hot flashes can be for many reasons. Headaches, frequent urination, shortness of breath, nausea, tense muscles, cold or sweaty hands. If you notice, if someone brought this to my awareness, I don't know, I'm horrible with time, years ago, and now I can always catch myself. Like when you're stressed, a lot of times you're like this. So during the day, I'll be like, and I'll relax. I would try to count one day how many times are your, yeah. Okay, next. These are just, I'm not going to go over these, but some of my little research people that want to learn some more of what I'm saying. Here's you some common ways anxiety can affect your body, if you want to learn some more about that. And here's from a psychiatrist talking about the neuroscience of fear and stuff. So if that interests you, there's some links in here. Okay? Here, we're going to briefly talk about this. There are different types of anxiety. First one we have is 6 million Americans are living with panic disorder. Women are twice as likely as men, but there could be many reasons for that. Women live longer, generally we go to the doctor more, but we are twice as likely. So where we panic versus generalized anxiety disorder, that's kind of where there's almost just this worry, maybe not even anything in particular, but just worry and what if this happens and that can happen, etc. That affects 6.8 million adults in the U.S. Women are twice as likely to be affected. Then we have social anxiety. Look, we've almost doubled, 15 million. This is equally common among men and women. This is where, not where you get nervous on being in front of people. That can happen anytime, like you're going to a new place. This can be where you are like, oh, they're judging me. They're looking at me. I'm going to look like an idiot. I'm going to say the dumbest thing. To where it's diagnosable. 15 million American adults. Then we have specific phobias, you know, spiders, elevators, etc. Look at that, 19.3 million adults. Women are twice as likely. And again, I love to give numbers to show you the impact, but I also know because of stigma that a lot of times those numbers are lower than what's really going on. Okay? So, what we're talking about today are cognitive distortions, or negative thinking patterns, thinking errors. All of those words are used interchangeably. That's what we're talking about today. These are exaggerated pattern of thought. We all do them. They're not based on facts. A lot of times they're based on how we feel. And it leads you to view things in a more negative light. So that's why it's important we're talking about this. Your mind is convincing you to believe these negative things about yourself or about the world around you. And it has, when we start to believe things, that impacts how we behave. So that's why it's so important to learn. These are some of the most common, but there are many that could be a whole nother teaching. I just want to talk about some of the most common. Okay? Cognitive distortions. And the thing to remember is all of us have these. I get this from my mom. We talk with our hands. Here we go. The thing to remember is that we all experience these, but if it's getting to a part where it's affecting your life and your relationships, it's definitely something to take a look at. Okay? So here's the first one. You don't have to answer out loud, but think, does this sound familiar? Your loved one, this could be spouse, whoever you're taking care of, your loved one compliments your love and dedication to visiting them several times. Then they make one improvement suggestion. You leave the visit feeling miserable and you dwell on that one suggestion. So they've listed all these wonderful things. One little thing that could be better, and you leave there and you just focus on that one thing. That's called filtering. Anyone going to admit they've done it? Yes.
All the time.
What this does is you're dismissing all the positives and you are just honing in on this one negative. Okay? Next. The next one. This is just an example if your loved one's at a facility or somewhere. A favorite staff member was a saint until she had to tell you no on one of your requests. Now you can't stand her. This is called all or nothing, black or white, polarized thinking. I do this a lot in dieting, where it's kind of like, blew it today, what's the point? There we go, I'm gonna go to Sonic and load up. But we do this a lot of, and it's, once we go over these, if a couple of these stick out to you, I would just really try to monitor yourself the next couple of days, because this is one of my dailies, all or nothing. And so it polarizes this, and it says that it leads you to extremely unrealistic standards for yourself, and then you have unrealistic standards for others, and it's going to cause you to get frustrated. And if it's on yourself, a lot of times that turns into like self-loathing and frustration. Others, it can get to where I can't depend on anybody. And so all or nothing, that's one of the biggies we do.
Dr. Oliver?
Yes.
Is it common that people might have just the two things that you've already gone over, that they might have both of those?
Yes, some of these, good question. Some of these, call me Natalie Goofball.
We're in the public, so.
Only my students call me Dr. Oliver.
Okay. All right.
But yes, and some of these will kind of overlap and sound familiar, not familiar, but kind of overlap, and then you could really do deep studying to get all the distinct ones. But yes, things can overlap, and you definitely can have more than one. You might have related to the two we just talked about. Okay, the next one. You speak up at a family meeting, and your suggestions are not included in the final decision. You leave the meeting thinking, I never say the right thing. This is called overgeneralization. You take one event, and then you turn it into this never-ending thing. The words that may come to mind a lot, so if you want to help identify this, is always. And you might do this to others too. We used it on ourselves. But you've probably done this to your spouse. You always forget to take the trash. Or you never take the trash. Always, never, everything, nothing. See how we're just going to those extreme ends. Overgeneralization. And see how that can kind of overlap if you just think on the surface, black or white. So yeah, they do kind of overlap. But what's happening is you're doing things without evidence and you're reacting to an assumption. Okay? Your loved one didn't call you this morning. They probably reached for the phone, fell, struck their head on the floor, broke their hip, the EMT are out to get them. That's called catastrophizing. Yeah, anyone guilty? We've done this. Maybe not with who you're taking care of an older adult, maybe with children, who knows. But this is jumping to the worst possible conclusion in every scenario, no matter how improbable it is. Is it possible mom didn't call you because she slept late or staff were giving her a bath? I mean, there could be so many other reasons why she didn't call you. This comes into where you start doing the what if. What if they were in a car accident? What if this happened? What if this happened? And then we start that where we can't shut our mind off. Okay, next. Next one. Your loved one gets sick. You blamed yourself for suggesting they move to the facility or you hired help, whoever got them sick. That's personalization. You take on responsibility that's not you. I think a lot of females do this. I think a lot of moms do this. I'm not a mom. I don't do that a lot. But a lot of them do. And so this is where you start thinking for some reason, or if you're one of those quick ones to say, I'm sorry. It's like, did you do anything? So a lot of times where you're feeling guilty, and a lot of times that can happen with caregiving as well. A lot of guilt. But sometimes this personalization is where you can incorrectly assume that people left you out on purpose. They did that on purpose. They probably weren't even thinking about you. You know, but we do that sometimes. Okay? Another one. I bet we got Christians in here. We probably got this one. I was brought up Southern Baptist, so I live by the shoulds. The shoulds.
Oh my goodness.
You get irritated with your loved one, and then you tell yourself you should not feel that way ever. Should statements are these subjective rules we've made up. We've made up that we should have a certain way, with no exceptions. So we don't give ourselves grace. We don't give other people grace as well. What happens? A lot of times you feel guilty if you should have done something that you didn't, disappointed, let down, or frustrated. These are, I should have made my bed this morning. Oh, I should have done this. Maybe he wouldn't be sick if I should have done that. Anyone admitting to the shoulds? I mean, that is something I cognizantly work on every day to try not to do. Okay, next. You firmly believe something bad will happen today because you woke up feeling like it will. Emotional reasoning. You don't even have to raise your hand. We've all done this. We just live by our emotions. I feel, therefore it must be true. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence this is true? Is it a fact or is it just how you feel? And if you get in the habit of that, you're going to keep doing that. And again, that can affect your relationships. And, you know, and Jaylyn had alluded to depression earlier, which is a whole nother topic we can talk about. But if you have depression and you're living by your feelings, well, you don't feel like getting out of bed. Well, you don't feel like even brushing your teeth. When you have depression, you don't feel like doing anything. So that's where we have to learn to not live by how we're feeling. Okay? You bring your loved one a new item of clothing and they don't say thank you. You just know they hate it. This is called mind reading. You assume that you know what others are thinking. I know you're going to say this and that. We've been guilty of saying that. Oh, that's probably with spouse as well. You may also assume that others are thinking negative thoughts about you. Again, a common theme you're probably seeing in all of this, we have to consider the evidence. What are we jumping to versus what's the reality? Okay? You want your loved one to smile big and hug you when you come to see them, despite knowing they've never been affectionate. That's not how they are. So every time you arrive, you let them know how upset you are with them for not smiling and hugging them. Eventually, you know that they'll come around and change. Fallacy of change. See, I told you I'll pick the top common ones. Probably we can check off to most of these. Those are when we're expecting others to do things just because that's what we think they should do. Okay? So we've talked about some of the common ones. How are we going to work through this? Will they all go away? No. But we're going to learn some coping skills. Okay, the first one. One of the key things, you've heard knowledge is power, right? So identifying them. Identifying what thinking error, what got me to this place of what I'm thinking. When you realize the thought is causing anxiety or just changing your mood, figure out what is that. Remember, they're distorted thinking, negative thinking patterns, thinking errors, all those kinds of things. So identify it. When you have just yelled at your husband, you should stop. That's the should. Okay. Okay, the next one, if this is a key therapy term, is reframing. Let me tell you what reframing means. Reframing means, how do you look at something? Are we going to look at the glass half empty? Or are we going to look at the glass half full? That's the easiest way I can explain reframing. We can go and say, my loved one has dementia. How could this happen to me? Life is horrible. Life will never get better. Or we could say, my loved one has dementia. This is going to be tough, but I know I can get supports. I know I can get help. And I know I can still find some beauty and some joy. So this one is, when you're reframing, you're trying to find shades of gray. Life is not black and white. We are not in black and white situations the whole thing. Yes, they may have a disease, but how we look at that disease doesn't have to be black and white. It can be gray. For example, my dad has dementia. He yells my name 1,000 times. Drives me insane. Okay? But then he loves to play Uno, and I sit down and play Uno with him, and we have the best time. We pick on my mom. We make fun of my husband. And for, 30 minutes, we are in joy. And then later he's wearing me out again. But I still find those moments. Okay? Next one.
Can I just point something out really
Yes,
quick?
ma'am.
I just wanted to say, did you just notice how she did that? She actually admitted publicly in front of a bunch of people she doesn't even know that her dad drives her crazy sometimes.
Oh, yeah. I did a training called,
Okay.
I thought this was my subconscious working. I did a training like 6 months ago, and it was called, I love you, I don't want to hurt you. And I was talking to my boss at MCC, and I go, whoa, I think I'm working therapeutically on myself here. Yeah.
We might want to have her do that for us one time, huh?
It's a good one, and they can attest to this too. Statistically speaking, the ones that hurt their loved ones are adult children or spouses. And most of the time, we have evil people out there. I'm not talking about that. A lot of times, if we're not dealing with our own stress, it ends up being someone you never thought you would do. So that's why I talk about it, to bring awareness. It's okay to get frustrated, but what do we do with that frustration? Okay, this right here, this is really cool because, in life, you've probably done this before, a pros and cons list, right? Okay, this is very interesting, and this could probably be a whole training as well, is we repeat behaviors because we get some kind of benefit out of them. So me yelling at my husband every day about the trash that he forgot, I must be getting something out of it. Either I'm getting stress out of my body, or in my mind I think I'm making him feel guilty with that fallacy of change. I'm getting something because we repeat a lot of behaviors that somehow benefit us. Maybe it's not healthy, but think about that. This is what it's talking about. So something may have helped you cope in the past, acting this negative certain way, but it doesn't mean at this stage of life that it's going to be helpful. So this is just really interesting to analyze why we react the way we do. And maybe you react the way you do, those shoulds could be way back from your childhood of how you should be, how you're supposed to act. Okay? This right here, if thinking errors are overpowering your life, I did practice therapy. I don't do it anymore. I'm just in higher ed. But therapy, we definitely recommend it. And CBT is there's so many out there. But as far as the literature and what we're talking about today, thinking errors, it's called cognitive behavioral therapy because you're taking what you're thinking and you're reacting and behaving because of those thoughts. So if you go into therapy, you're going to work on how did those thoughts get there and what are you thinking? How can we reframe it and change our behaviors and our outcome? That's what CBT is. And so this would be a worksheet you would do in therapy. It would say, how are you feeling? Like this one I used for work. You got an evaluation. You only picked out that one negative. You did that filtering, and then you label what it is. If you'll go to the next page, this right here, and again, you can have this PowerPoint. Again, these are things therapists would pass out to you. If you click on the yellow, you can get this worksheet. And this one, I did another example. This is healthy versus unhealthy coping. So it says, describe a problem you're currently dealing with. Mom doesn't smile when I come to see her. My unhealthy coping strategy. I jump to the conclusion she must be upset with me. The consequences of thinking that, it makes me feel upset and defensive. What's a healthy coping way? Think objectively. Why don't I just ask Mom how she's doing instead of assuming? Expected outcomes of this healthy one, I'll find out something else is on her mind. I may not even get upset. Barriers to using this, why am I not implementing this? Barriers to using a healthy coping strategy, if you don't use it, this is where the guilt and depression comes in. Okay, so this is a worksheet you could work on when you're having those thinking. Next, yes ma'am.
So does anybody else in the room feel like that sounds like a lot of work? Extra work to do that work. I mean, because you got to think about everything.
Mm-hmm.
You have to analyze everything and then figure out maybe what to change and everything. It seems like a lot of extra work, but I mean, I do say the benefits would be like tremendous. So it's a little time, a little work, but because everything that you've described to me sounds like it's really negative. I mean, all these things that she's described are really negative, and that makes you feel bad and can take a toll on your physical health and affect your relationship with the person you're caring for and others as well.
Yeah.
And so it would be a win-win for like everybody to invest the time and the effort, and mainly even just starting with yourself. I mean, you're going to start feeling better instead of always feeling like you're inadequate or you're being a bad, mother, a bad spouse, a bad whatever, right?
And I will tell you, just as somebody who's kind of done some of these coping skills, right? So I didn't get diagnosed with my anxiety until I was 40. I can remember my first symptoms as young as 12, just so that everybody understands. I mean, now that I know what the symptoms are, I know how it manifests itself with me, I recognize it now all the way back then, right? This is a little overwhelming at first when you start these worksheets, but the more you do these things, the faster you become at it. And then all of a sudden, there'll be things sometimes during the day, I can do that whole worksheet and never get out of my car. Like never even write it down. I just mentally go through it in my head and I'm like, yep, there's that thought. This is what triggered it. This is what I need to do to fix it. Like it automatically, it now clicks with me more because I'm self-aware. I look back when I was younger and I didn't know what was going on with me. I didn't know why my anger would get one way, really fast, and then I would go off on somebody, or then the next day I'd be extremely happy, and why everything for me had to be perfect all the time. Like never could have an error, never could. My mother went through more notebook paper when I was in school because I couldn't have a cross out on a piece of paper, right? So there's little things, but as you do these things that she's talking about, you'll find yourself, you get faster and faster at it. And sometimes you're like, oh, I don't even have to write it down. Like I already know what's going on, now I recognize it, and I know how to correct it. So you get, the more self-aware you get and the more you do it, I promise you, it becomes less and less work.
Yeah.
I can imagine you feel better.
Oh yeah.
And you can laugh about it. Where before.
Oh, you have to have humor. That's
Yeah.
one of our
You have to have
coping
humor.
strategies we'll talk about. You
Yeah.
gotta have humor.
You gotta have humor and you gotta have grace. Like
Yeah.
those are two things you gotta have.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So I just thought I would
Yeah.
share. It doesn't
Thank
get
you.
easier. The coping skills get easier.
It does. And the thing, and Christine talked about, which we've done a training on the hidden patient, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
that caregiver. That's one of the things we love to do a training on because you neglect yourself. And that's things that I've had to educate my mom on. When we've had fights when she first moved in, I was like, get out and go spend time with your friends. Because she thought her whole life had to end and she had to sit at home with my dad. And so we fought and fought. She finally did it. She came home and she's like, so glad I got to just hang out with my friends. I wasn't a wife. I was just me, and I was just with my friends. And now she's like, okay, Natalie, I'm gonna go do this. Stay home with Dad. Okay, so what else can you do? Replace those absolutes. We've got to stop with that black and white, all or nothing. If that's one thing you can take away from here, that's gonna help your stress level. Label the behavior. Don't label yourself. Don't say, I'm so horrible. Okay, maybe the action or the words I said could have been a little ugly, but that doesn't make me. And I know you're thinking, oh, this could be all mumbo jumbo. It's not. This is evidence-based and it works. Jaylene just told you about it. I can tell you about it. It works. I do not talk about things that don't work. I talk about things that I know work. And so labeling that behavior and not labeling you. Because when you do the shoulds, you're labeling you. Search for positives, that's that reframing. Am I gonna see the negative or can I see some beauty? And is there evidence to what I'm saying, doing, feeling, and thinking? Is there evidence to this? Okay, next. This one, you'll probably hear this in every mental health presentation you'll ever hear. Journaling, it works. It is research backed. And let me tell you this, okay, for a while I worked in a jail. And so I would have clients that would say, I don't want to write it down. I don't want anyone to read it. Let me tell you what the therapeutic part is. The therapeutic part of journaling is taking it from here and here and writing it on paper. You can tear it up, you can burn it, you can delete it, whatever you want to do. The therapy process is getting it down on paper. Now, there can be some benefits of going back and looking at patterns. I'm not talking about that. If you want to get that stress out and those feelings, get it on paper. I'm telling you, it works. Okay? And oh, if you'll go back, sorry. I've got anything you see in blue or highlighted in yellow are links to where you can get more information. Yes?
And I'll share one thing about journaling, just so you guys know. This wasn't me. I stole this. Somebody in one of my presentations had this idea. But they journal in 3 colors. They journal in red, green, and blue. On days they're feeling super anxious, they journal in red, and they journal everything down. On days they're feeling happy and like lighthearted or whatever, they journal in green. On days they may be feeling like a little blue or sad, they journal in blue. And then like over 3 or 6 months, they go back and look at those entries and they see if there's anything in common.
Yeah.
Like on the days they were blue, are there certain things that were happening or going on, and you can kind of start pinpointing what's making you feel that way.
You can see patterns. You
Yeah.
can see triggers. You can see.
And you can see, okay, did I have more red days? Did I have more blue days? Did I have more green days? And it kind of just makes you self-aware. So somebody in my class gave me
I love
that
that.
idea, and I'm a journaler, so I took it. And
I love it. Yeah, and you can say, did I exercise this day? Did I do whatever? I'm sorry. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
She was just sharing something with me.
Yes.
I wanted her to share with
Go
everybody.
ahead.
Journaling, like y'all were saying. So just, I'm gonna make this really fast, but I lost a daughter 5 years ago on Monday, okay? So I went to a heart-to-heart retreat for mothers that have lost children. It was a real small group. So one thing we did was all during the retreat, which was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we would write down something that, like, what if I had done this, you know, or what if, anyway, so we wrote stuff down on a piece of paper. So one evening, our job was to smash it up, you know, and we had a little fire pit, throw it in there. And that was so,
Therapeutic.
yes.
Yeah, because it's that symbolism, and it's done. It is. You can have. I know, like when I was at DePaul, sometimes we would have, or they would write it, and we would have them throw it in a trash can. So there is something about releasing it as well. Thank you so much for sharing.
But if you keep it, is that bad?
No.
Like
You
later
can keep
look at
it. You can keep it because, like Jaylyn was talking about, you can go back and you can see patterns, and you can see what different triggers are, and you can notice, like, oh, the days that I did some exercise, I had a lot more patience versus the day that I didn't have any sleep or I didn't eat lunch. It could be as little as that, or it could be anything. It's great to keep it. I'm just saying, some people are very private and worry. I don't want other people. If I'm going to write my innermost thoughts, I don't want anyone to find it. So there's benefits to both. Good question. Oh, so this next one this kind of goes along with journaling, is gratitude. Lots of research on gratitude. And again, if you think it all kind of comes together, it's that mindset of what can I be grateful for? Instead of being wah, wah. We're not dismissing that. Life's hard. Life is hard. Life is hard as a caregiver. It's hard. But what we are saying is there's still some beauty in it. And we have to remind ourselves. So like on what I do for a journal, because I can't focus for a whole long time. So I have a 1-pager, and it says, it's great. It's just fits my personality. What are you grateful for? What do you need forgiveness for? Who do you need to pray for? What's something good you did for somebody, and what's something good someone did for you? And that's mine every day. But it helps my mindset of, did I do something giving for someone? Oh, I am really grateful for this. And so journaling, the point is there, it doesn't have to be all this long. Versus my mom who loves to journal, she can write a book. So it's very individual. Okay? This right here is another exercise you can do. I'm not going to go over it now for sake of time, but it's an exercise you can do about what you're grateful for, and it helps. You can complete it, post it somewhere. All it does is help in reframing your mind of let's get out of the deep, dark stuff. Okay? Another one, this is another worksheet you would do if you were in therapy of how you set up your mind when you're frustrated and what's the silver lining. This is another worksheet you can do. Okay? Key. Again, we could do a whole training on this. We don't, generally, if you're like me, I can show all the grace in the world to others, but I am so hard on me. I don't know why I put these expectations, the shoulds, all of that here. And so I read this years ago, and I used that and would tell every client, if we would treat ourselves how we treat our friends, boy, we show grace to others. We show a lot of grace, but a lot of times we don't show it to ourselves. And so those negative thoughts come in of, you're not a good caregiver, you're not doing enough, you're being selfish by going to spend time with your friends, this and this and this. We've got to address that negative. And there's even, I didn't put it in here, but there's even a therapy technique, which is funny. It's called stop thought. So what you do is you have that negative thought, like I'm a horrible caregiver because I'm with my friends. And you physically do something. You go, stop. Or you do the rubber band, stop. Stop. Something, and then you need to prepare an automatic thing to replace it with. That's something simple you can do. So when I go, I should be doing this I should go play Uno with my dad, even though I haven't graded and I've got a lot of stuff to do. Stop. I may not be able to play with my dad tonight, but I'm going to make time tomorrow to do it because I've got to get the stuff graded. We replace that because our mind affects how we feel, which affects our actions and how we behave. Okay? Love this. So this is another CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So those automatic negative thoughts, a way you can remember that is ants, because ants are annoying, right? Automatic negative thoughts. So you fill this out. You say, I made a mistake at work. That automatic thought, I'm probably going to get fired. Let's stop. New thought. Okay, I messed up. Mistakes can happen. I'll do whatever. It kind of goes along with that stop thought of, because we have patterns. We have deep, embedded patterns of how we respond to things back from when we were little. And so it's never too late to work on these and change them, because they may have worked for a time, but it doesn't mean they're working and they're healthy now. Okay? This is another one you can do, another assignment I've had clients do. List your strengths. And so I list some strengths here. It's that reframing, it's putting reframing, gratitude, journal, it's putting it all together. What are some positive things about you? You're more than a caregiver. You're more than a mom. You're more than a church member. You're a lot of things. Put your list of all those, and then you brainstorm, how do I use these in everyday life? How have these strengths helped me overcome things? Okay, next. This is a whole thing that talks about you got to get your stress under control. If you don't get that chronic, meaning long-term stress, if you don't get it under control, you're going to have health problems. It could get to an anxiety disorder. That's what this whole thing is talking about, and kind of what I've talked on earlier. Some of it's learned behavior. Some of it's that negative thinking. Sometimes we just have some personality traits of perfectionism or different things, but we got to work on it. We cannot live with chronic stress. We've got to get it under control. Okay? This is awesome. Who has heard of progressive muscle relaxations? Okay. Love this. Okay, this is my go-to. This is relaxing your body. I've got the instructions here. You can click on the link. You can go on YouTube and find a video of someone talking you through it. What it does is you tense up parts like this. You tense, hold it for 10 seconds, and you release. You do this head to toe. You can do this at night before you go to sleep. It relaxes your body. Sometimes when I'm driving and I'm at a red light, I'll go like this and let go. I'm like, they probably think I'm goofy, but it helps get that tension out. This stuff works. Okay? Positive affirmations. This kind of goes along with, so this says we all get stressed, and that's normal, but sometimes we say a lot of negative things to ourselves. These are some things you can replace it with. Instead of saying, I'm a bad caregiver, you can say, I'm doing the best I can. You can say, what I'm doing would be hard for anybody. You can say, I'm not perfect, and that's okay. You can say, I can't control some things that happen. So this is just replacing those negative thoughts with the positive. Yes?
You can say it's okay to not be okay.
Yes.
That's my favorite one.
Yes. Yeah, it
Or
is.
you can only control what you can control. Those are my other ones. Those are my two that I say on a regular.
And we
I love
can't
those.
control somebody else or a disease.
We can't change their mind like that fallacy of change. Okay, next. I love this handout. This right here is the link in blue. This talks about things to have better night's sleep. Let me tell you, if you are like, I can't focus on healthy eating, exercise, sleep, la la la, focus on sleep first. Focus on sleep first. The whole world will change if you get a good night's sleep. Focus on that. This gives you some suggestions, things to do. One of the things, I have sleep apnea, and my doctor told me one of the things, which is on here, go to bed at the same time every night and wake up. I said, I'm not going to do that. Which one's better? And he said, if you're not going to do both, then no matter how late you stay up the night before, keep getting up at the same time. Your body, your rhythm, all that science stuff that I don't understand, that internal clock stuff. And so I do. I start my wake up morning process, even if I've woken up at 3 a.m. grading. I start it because it does make a difference. So these are just some things you can do. Don't have too much caffeine before bed. Be careful of naps. Can't have those long naps and then gonna sleep at night. I love naps. Okay, next.
Dr. Michael
Yes.
Scullin, by the way, is the head of the neuroscience department at Baylor, and he does an amazing program about sleep and the benefits of sleep and how like earthworms sleep. Who knew, right? And so, but I mean, it is so incredibly important. It affects so many things. It is incredibly important for caregivers, which you all are at some level, right? And even if your loved one was in a facility or a group home or anything like that, you're still a caregiver. You're involved, right? It's just a different, or long distance caregiving. You're still a caregiver, even if they're not living with you. And so sleep, and it's not the amount of sleep, it's the right kind of sleep. It's not even necessarily quality when we talk about quality. It's the right kind of quality sleep. And also for persons with diagnoses of different kinds and things like that. So if ever you want to hear about that, shoot me an email or something, and I will talk to Dr. Scullin about doing that. He's done that for me years ago in the past, and I know he'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, he does great.
When
He's
you're talking about
he
sleep,
is definitely
yeah,
expert
he's
on that.
awesome.
This right here, if you need something to kind of guide you through it, this is a sleep diary. Love this. What you do is you ask your questions. This is stuff I do before I go to bed, up at the top, answer it for a couple days. This is how I feel in the morning. Look at your patterns. What's going on? Why were you feeling better? Well, I didn't drink a Route 44 30 minutes before that. Right? This is so good. I love this. Okay, next. Okay, love this. Says 109-year-old woman says secret to long life is avoiding other people. And I believe her. I love this. And the point of this is next, laughter. I love this picture, this lady in the stall. And this is, the link is in here somewhere. I can't remember where. Oh, I think up at the top. This talks about benefits of laughter. Laughter is so important. I mean, we've worked in healthcare. I've worked in criminal justice. You've got to find humor in life. You've got to find it as caregivers, or you're going to lose it. We've got to have humor, and we're never laughing at the person. We're laughing at situations or ourselves. But anyway, this talks about laughter relaxes your whole body. It's free. It can help you release those distressing emotions, that anxiety. It triggers the release of endorphins, those feel-good chemicals. And it strengthens relationships. This was probably my favorite one. And I just pulled some of the top ones. Because when you laugh with someone, you are bonding. Even like when you laugh at the person you're caring for, and y'all can laugh at something instead of getting mad and irritated. It's bonding. Okay?
Anybody remember Reader's Digest?
Yes.
Yes. Remember they had that whole article, laughter is the best medicine. They got it right so many years ago before the rest of us knew that.
Yeah. This is huge, which is why we are so glad you are here today. Don't do this alone. You can't be a caregiver alone. You can't do it. And sadly, remember our numbers. I don't remember them, but they were high. Remember our caregivers. Sadly, caregivers, there's so many, yet a lot of times we feel alone. And we feel like no one understands what I'm going through. But there's something about knowing that someone else is kind of suffering with me. And knowing that others, they may not know exactly what I'm going through, but they know what it's like to watch your loved one deteriorate. They know what it's like to feel helpless and say, I can't do anything to change what physically is happening, but I can do something for the moment and be present. And there's something about not walking that journey alone. And so going to support groups, in person, online, coming to trainings like this, reaching out to organizations and knowing you can't do this alone. I am a retired therapist. I am a professor. I've been in mental health forever. But I still didn't ever see a therapist. I was like, oh, I don't need it. I know too much. Okay, mom and dad moved in. I got a therapist. Guess what else I started doing? I go to an online support group. Because I'm not Natalie who educates the community. I'm Natalie, the daughter that's struggling and watching her dad. And it's hard. Okay? This one, things which could be a whole training, exercise. What I always tell people, I know in my mindset, I thought exercise meant I have to wear certain clothes, I have to be at a certain place, I have to do certain things. No. Exercise can be, I'm going to get up and walk up and down this path up here in the church for a couple minutes. It can be anything. Literature talks about taking those quick breaks can help. It doesn't have to be this long, drawn-out thing like I always thought it had to be. Eating right, we know that. I'm not even going to preach on that. That's hard. Okay, spiritual support. A lot of literature talking about people of faith and how I don't know how people that don't have faith make it as caregivers. It's tough. And so, but this talks about the positive impact that it can have on your mental health by knowing that there's a higher being, being around others that believe that and supporting. Okay? This right here is just to remind you that good mental health is vital at any age. We are never too old or too young to do it. It's also to remind you that your physical and your mental health are connected. They are. So to say that you don't have to take care of your mental health, it's going to affect your physical and vice versa. Okay? This right here has links, everything in blue you can print. So if you're like, I want to learn some more about that generalized anxiety disorder, or I want to learn more about social anxiety, here's some links you can look at, okay? This right here, I love this. This was in some article, this link right here. If you go to dailycaring.com, I get a lot of my training stuff from there. You can get on their newsletter. One of the best caregiver resources I have found. Anyway, these are some free mobile apps for your phone that can help you with mental health or stress or anxiety, etc. So those are there. This right here, I am a professor, and one time I was adjunct at Baylor years ago, And there were students coming in after I taught a class, and they go, "What'd you talk about?" And the student goes, "I don't know." And I thought, "Oh no, we're going to summarize now. You're going to know what we talked about." So now I always do a summary. So what we covered today, your health includes your mental and physical health. Anxiety is the #1 mental health diagnosis worldwide. We talked about different types of anxiety briefly. We talked about symptoms of anxiety, and then we focused on the distorted cognitions, those thinking errors. We talked about some of the common ones. Then we talked about all these things you can do to change. First of all, you need to identify it. You can reframe it. You can do a cost-benefit analysis. Why do I do what I do? What is the benefit I'm getting here? We talked about some cognitive behavioral strategies, some of the thinking errors and some of those worksheets. We talked about replacing those absolutes because life and caregiving is all in shades of gray. We talked about, do you have evidence of this thought pattern you're having? Journaling. We talked about that. Practicing gratitude. Ants. Does anyone remember what those are?
Annoying.
Automatic negative thoughts. Acknowledge your strengths. Remember the positives about yourself. I put get a grip on your chronic stress. Don't dismiss it. You're just as important as the person you're caring for. Positive affirmations, sleep and mood, incorporating humor. Don't go through this alone, and then resources. Next. That's it. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And remember, Christine can email this to you so you can have access to all of this. Did
And
you
I
wanna
had
add?
another thought while you were just going through your summary, and I don't know if anybody else is guilty of this, but I used to always think positive self-talk was conceit. Or right? Or I guess I'm the only one. I always thought like, how like you're not that great. It's like I'm not that good. Who am I? I'm nobody. And so positive self-talk was really hard, right? Not only if somebody else paid me a compliment, I would somehow think they didn't mean it or whatever. Or
That's
if
another thinking disorder. We didn't cover that one.
a whole nother. We'll include
Yeah.
that in
Yeah.
the next thing maybe that we
Yeah.
do. Yeah. So seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. So things like that. Well, then also it was like, well, how could you put yourself on a pedestal? Shame on you, kind of thing. So maybe I'm the only one.
Well,
But-
I was brought up the baby, so like, no.
Oh,
I was like, yeah, I ain't
I was
good.
the oldest. There you go. There we get
Which
into
that's
some
a whole
birth
interesting
order
thing, too.
Yes. So,
But
so
I'll
it's
admit,
not.
I'll admit this. When I, like I said, I don't encourage things that I don't believe in. And when I first learned about that stuff years ago, I was like, that's mumbo jumbo, modern, whatever. Ugh. And I just didn't practice it. I didn't research it or read about it. Finally, I did because I was like, oh my gosh, CBT and all this stuff. It is true. What we say comes from what we think, affects how we feel, and affects how we behave. So it's your choice if you want to believe this and work on it and catch yourself, identify it, reframe it, or if you want to say it's mumbo jumbo like I did for many years. But it really does work. Because our minds are powerful.
They are, yes, and our thoughts are. There was that thing like you are what you eat kind of thing. Well, it's you are what you think. I just came up with that. I don't know where that came from.
Trademark.
That's a Chrissy original. I don't know. But seriously, I mean, our thoughts are so very powerful, and it's like so it's not ever that your feelings aren't valid, correct? They're
Right.
always valid. We're entitled to feel what we feel, but they're not always true. Our feelings aren't true. They're not accurate a lot of times if we're having these negative thoughts or these unhealthy thinking patterns, but we're entitled to feel them, and a lot of us, we're not just going through one thing. It's like if, anybody could go through one thing, but usually there's a lot of things on top of being a chronic caregiver in whatever situation, y'all are in. So many different things to think about, but I'm hoping that by learning some of these things and taking it to heart and beginning, you're not going to get everything right away. It's going to take time and practice, but it's going to bring you into a healthier place and a place where you feel more peaceful People who have anxiety are not peaceful, are they? They're not, right? And so, you know, you're going to start feeling better. Nobody likes feeling all those negative thoughts, and it makes you unhappy. And then it affects your relationship with the person that you're caring for and other people around you. And so it is, I think, really beneficial to everybody. It also could be helpful for you to understand, depending on your situation with the loved one that you're caring for, they might be having anxiety and reacting out of the anxiety and not personally, you know, against something. And so it's good to have a better understanding of that regarding the loved one that
They
you're
might not be
caring
able to articulate
for. Right.
they're having some of these symptoms, but if you know them, you can go, oh, maybe that's what they're going through.
Right. And whether it be an older person with some form of dementia or, you know, any other kind of diagnosis like that, or a young adult with autism or, you know, some other type of intellectual or developmental disease, you know, if they're not able to articulate, or maybe they don't even know what to call it, you know, if you're recognizing some of this, you can help them work through it. And again, that brings them to a better place, brings you to a better place, you know, than everybody. And then we can all laugh together, which is wonderful. I did want to just mention one thing that I also firmly believe, and that is that I think fear and anxiety are tied in super closely together. And I think because of what our world has experienced since, you know, some of you are nodding your heads, you're like, yes, we had 2 years of constant fear of, we had a fear-demic, and fear of so many things, and being with people, and about the disease itself, and how we're all gonna die, you know, and all these things. And I think some people have never gotten over some of that fear. It's heightened their anxiety so much to where, and it's important to not feed your anxiety, because it just makes you more anxious, and then you're anxious about more things, right? If there was just maybe one thing or two things that you realized were triggers for your anxiety, now all of a sudden, because you've got this heightened fear, or some people that are older, maybe some people that you care for, have this heightened fear that has never gone away. Most of us in this room have probably overcome a lot of that, you know, and we're more aware, we're more cautious about all, you know, health things, you know, and everything. But some people have never gotten over that, and that fear has crossed over into every area of their life. Well, it certainly makes sense they have increased anxiety over a lot of things, and a lot of different types of anxiety. I think that Natalie shared.
One thing that's just popped in my mind when she said that is that we know, like, statistically, once you fall as an older adult, your odds increase.
Yeah.
Okay? And so we also know that a lot of times when you have that fear, it can be immobilizing. It can be where that older adult has fallen, so now they're not going to drink and eat as much because they don't want to go to the bathroom. Then their nutrition can go down, and so their dehydration can go down. And so fear, that can be how it's manifesting inside of them. So yes,
and they may not be bathing as often because
I'm going to fall in the bathroom. I mean,
they may not be going out, and isolation is critical, right? And loneliness, and that's a lot of things that Friends for Life, all of our programs are addressing and helping in some ways. That isolation and loneliness and anxiety and fear, that is all tied in together and feed each other. So I hope that's helpful in terms of a caregiver perspective and everything. Does anybody have any other questions or ideas or thoughts? Anything you want to share? We still have time. Experiences, personal experiences?
Yes, my mother, I was her caregiver for 4 years. She just passed away in February due to her dementia and heart failure. I was her caregiver for 4 years alone. I didn't have any support of going to get a caregiver support, so it's been very hard for me to I still feel guilt. I don't know why, but I did what I could, how I could. My mother died in my home. She was in hospice, but me being the only one kind of felt guilt because no one around my family wanted to help because her dementia. She was really deteriorating, and it was very hurtful. But now that I'm, in school trying to learn, I want to be an example and teach others what a caregiver.
Excellent. You're in school? What are you
Yes,
studying?
Mental health.
I love that. See, that is a living example of reframing. We could, in action, taking this difficult situation and turning it around and saying, What have I learned from this, and how can I help? And things you'll learn is the grief process and what all that entails. And you might even get to where you need to have a therapist to walk through any feelings of resentment of others not helping.
Yes.
Guilt of things I should have done that I did. All of those things that you may have someone help walk with you. Sometimes you go to a support group. Sometimes you need a professional.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a friend or a family member. But sometimes you don't have that. So I'm so glad you brought that up, and I'm so glad you're in school.
Thank you.
And there are professionals too that do provide some services that can help. Again, whether it is even a younger person with even an autism diagnosis or some form of IDD, or whether it's an adult, in that situation, or somebody with dementia. Not only are there, you can reach out to friends and family and stuff like that, and please do that, because that is so important for caregivers to get some break. Yes, we're all in here have been or are caregivers, and then so church members and old friends of theirs maybe, if they're still comfortable around them and things like that. But there are professionals that also provide those services. And I am always willing to talk with anybody. You can call me. We can schedule a care consultation by phone or whatever. Again, we can talk through some things and maybe work on some tips and techniques, maybe reiterate some of the things that Natalie shared with us. Or sometimes I may, and I do have a list of support groups. There aren't very many. I know there are several that are dealing with Parkinson's here. We've got a fabulous Parkinson's support group that actually meets in this same building. And there are a couple of others regarding dementia. So, don't hesitate to give me a call. I'll help with whatever I can. What were you going to add something, Ida?
Well, as a comment, I was a caregiver for 21 years.
Wow.
But it was 3 different people. And the first 2 were fine. I handled them, I coped with them. It was my mom and we had a wonderful experience. The second one was my aunt who had financial means not to have to live with me. So, but I handled all of her affairs, took her to all the doctors and eating out and buying her things and all that. So I did all that. Even though she was in a facility, I was still a caregiver. But the third time was almost the straw that broke the back.
Well, that's a lot for one person to do.
Well, even if I hadn't had the other 2, Parkinson's is so hard. And when you see a loved one decline, and not just that, but what I felt most guilty about was the resentment of having to always be there.
Hence why I did the one, I love you, I don't want to hurt you.
Yeah.
Because I do, and I always want to validate. I don't do a lot of trainings anymore now that I'm living it,
But she will for me.
I will for her if you
That's
tell her
right.
you want something. But that's one of the things I really try to press upon caregivers that people didn't really talk about is that there are days my dad drives me nuts. There are days when I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm inviting them to move in here. Oh my God, I don't know. But what that means is I got to take care of me. And if that means I need a therapist, if that means I have a personal trainer now. What I've done is it's made me focus on me where I was always pushing me aside. And I thought, I can't, they're seeing a really bad side at this stage of his life with me. And I don't want that, And so it was so funny when they first moved in, and I was so, we don't have children. We're just not used to neediness. And my dad's like, Natalie. And I just like, what? My mom goes,
I thought
you were an
I never sat down to relax.
Yeah.
You suddenly needed something.
Yeah, and we don't. And what we're
Never,
hoping by these things is that you don't wait till it gets to that point. And then I'll tell you one more funny story because they keep me humble. Is when I first got my doctorate, which is in social work, which God carried me through. I don't remember statistics or any of that stuff, but I cried all the time. But anyway, when I first got it, and I was trying to tell my dad to do something, he goes, why do I have to do it? And I go, because I'm a doctor. He goes, you're not a medical doctor. So he keeps me humble, very, very humble.
And Mom. So, yes, ma'am.
And not hurting somebody isn't necessarily physical.
It's emotional, verbal.
It can be verbal and say
Right.
something ugly to them that you don't really mean.
Or it could be neglect of, I don't want to deal with this, so I'm not going to make sure that they change clothes and all this.
Right.
And I think it's so, I mean, we could set up another training on that, and Jaylene can attest to that too, of just this. I truly believe 90% of it is not intentional. But I think we just get to this.
Yeah, and I'm not a caregiver, but I can tell you I went through a divorce and moved in with my mom for 2 years while I was trying to go through all of that and get everything settled, and she got the brunt of my anxiety. I mean, you know, everything that was going on when I would have a bad day. I told you guys earlier, when my anxiety is full blown, either I'm an emotional mess and I'm crying and you can't stop it, or I'm gonna make somebody else an emotional mess. And my mom got the result of that on the regular. And that wasn't fair to her, right? She didn't. Sometimes she did something that was Let me rephrase that. I think these two have met my mom. My mom is my best friend. The last thing I would ever want to do is hurt her. But she was the one that was there, right? She's the person that's closest to you. She's the one that y'all, I mean, we all do that. It's whoever loves us the most, we know we can treat them the worst and they're not going anywhere, right? We kind of take advantage of that love. And so there were days where, like I said, I was not nice to her. And it wasn't intentional. It wasn't, and sometimes I couldn't even explain why I was doing it. I just had that it was my anxiety was so high in the feeling, right?
And
So
that
I think
brings
that's
guilt.
some of it's guilt.
Right.
And again, it's just some of it's being overwhelmed, some
Exhausted.
of it's exhaustion, right? And I'm in a very demanding role in my job in the sense that, I mean, I tell her my phone doesn't stop. I just had to step out because I get a phone call. But my law enforcement, my hospitals, sometimes Christine, sometimes Natalie, I mean, you know, my phone's going off 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, most of the time. With somebody that's needing placement, that's needing help, that needs to ask me a question. I love the ability that I have everything up here to be able to help them, but sometimes it's too much. Like sometimes there's a thing that's overstimulated, and I think between Monday and Tuesday I counted, and there were, just in phone calls, I had 83 phone calls.
Oh.
Just between Monday and Tuesday.
insane.
That did not even include, and that was just work related. That had nothing to do with my personal life. Luckily, my boyfriend is 5,000 miles away because I don't have to worry about it. But yeah, I think it's just important for us to make sure that we, like, you have to understand the way you feel. You have to understand, like, sometimes it's okay to not be okay, right? And nobody's going to be 100% on their game every single day. It's just not possible.
And it's not selfish to take care of you. It
Yeah,
actually
give
helps the person you're caring
give
for.
yourself grace when you're having a bad day. Give yourself grace and say, hey, today's just one of those days. Tomorrow will be better, right? So learn not to be so hard on yourself because it's
That's
normal.
something I have
And
to
give
learn.
them that
Even
grace.
if
That's
it's
normal.
after the fact,
Yes.
right?
I still feel guilt, like, did I do the right thing? Or did I take care of her like she was supposed to?
But you did the best you could with the knowledge
That you had at the time. And that's all we can do. We can all any of us can do is, like she said, the best that we can at that particular point in time with the knowledge and the resources that we have at our disposal. You can only control what you can control, right? That's it. And so when we start learning that to let go of the things we can't control, I promise you it'll change your life.
I think that's the serendipity prayer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
is.
Serenity prayer.
The God's
Serenity
prayer.
serendipity. I don't know.
Well, you know.
The serenity. Thank you.
It could be
Like,
serendipitous. We don't know.
know. Okay, so does anybody else have anything else? Thank you for being so brave.
Yeah.
To share such a personal experience, because that takes a lot of bravery, please. To be able to share that in a group of people that you don't know or do know, or right?
I'm just trying to spread some awareness of what a caregiver sometimes don't know when you don't have a support system. You just try to do the best you can because you're not aware of all this help that's around you.
And talking about it normalizes it. That's why we share. That's why I share. Yeah, my dad drives me nuts. Yeah, I had to get a therapist. Yeah, now I'm going to a support group, because it helps normalize and helps you say, oh, I'm not the only one having to do this. So
And
that's why it's so great to talk about.
In
this
our
stuff.
world, we call that lived experience,
Yeah.
right? So for the longest time, I was embarrassed about my generalized anxiety disorder, and the fact that I let it get to me, or that just embarrassed of even having the diagnosis, because again, it was the stigma, right? And think about, sometimes it's even medical conditions. Like sometimes people with dementia, they don't want anybody to know they have dementia, or because they're always afraid how other people are going to view them. So the more that people share their experience, the more that it helps others realize they're not alone, and that everybody can do that.
You know, what's bad is my daughter has anxieties, but she's having anxieties on taking medicine.
I can admit,
She won't do any of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can admit to that. So I just shared with Natalie earlier. I have never been on anxiety medication. I tried it one time, hated the way it made me feel. I managed mine with exercise for years. And April 30th of this year, I literally had the worst anxiety panic attack that I've ever had in my life. It knocked me out for an entire day. I mean, I was uncontrollably sobbing, crying, made myself sick to the point I was throwing up, couldn't keep any food down, couldn't keep anything down. I woke up the next morning exhausted because I couldn't sleep that night. Woke up the next morning exhausted. My very first phone call was to the doctor. Started my anxiety meds on May 1st.
Well, I think sometimes there's that saying too, the lesser of two evils.
Right.
And so, you know,
So now she's going to a heart doctor. She's thinking, well, something's wrong with her heart.
right.
Not the she don't start the medicine. So
Right.
I'm going to go get a heart monitor.
Right.
And you might, you know, sometimes a lot of general practitioners are so knowledgeable in anxiety and depression that sometimes if they hear it from the physician, the numbers and the prevalence and the symptoms, and sometimes even it's crazy about words. Sometimes if we say this medicine helps with stress versus anxiety,
Yep.
wow, what a door that can open. And so maybe talking to her physician of, but
and
she
keep
may have
in
to bottom
mind-
out first. She
Yeah.
may have to do
And
where,
keep in mind that everybody's anxiety symptoms are different, right? So some people, it's the uncontrollable fidgeting, the shakes, the nervous energy. I don't necessarily get that way. For me, it's more the perfectionism, and it's more internal, and it's the overstimulation and my brain not shutting off. But externally, you're not going to see me, trust me, you're never going to see me hyper. That is just not me. And so you're not going to see that part of me, right? Sometimes we anticipate like anxiety. When you think of what somebody physically looks like with anxiety, you almost picture the same thing as somebody that has ADHD, right? Can't focus, moves from one word to another, one sentence. That's not always the case.
no, they could be sitting right in front of you.
They could be
having
sitting right in front of you, and again, you would never even know. And that's the hard part about like depression and anxiety and mental health conditions in general is every individual has different symptoms. It's not like having heart disease or having diabetes where everybody's symptoms are similar. And so you also have to contemplate what is also hard with medicine is because everybody's symptoms are different, their treatment regimen is different. So one medication that works for somebody may not be. When I went to my doctor this time, I told her, I said, we're not doing that other pill. Like
and doses may be
yeah, and
different.
doses. And so we had to play around with my dosing the first few months. And she said, okay, well, we're going to try this med. And so there's so many different options out there now. And you just have to be patient and find the one that works for you.
But she could start with exercise and sleep.
That-
If she-
those
Used
two would
to,
help.
and then but she got a new medication about 2 months ago and still hasn't started it. She got anxiety.
About starting it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I also feel like, starting medication is like, it does take a couple of weeks before you stop
it
feeling
yeah.
sleepy
Different
or
reasons
weird
are
or whatever.
Sometimes up to
So,
months.
Yeah, if you take it for a day or two, you're never gonna get to the good part.
Yep.
You know, and I'm kinda like you, I had one of those breakdowns, you know, taking care of my mom and cried for like every day for 2 weeks. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. My car wash thing didn't work and I'm crying about it. This is not normal, you know? And so,
As you're sobbing, you're like, this is not
this is
normal.
not normal. I have to do something. And so, but after like a week or two, I'm like, this is life changing. This is like
But
And
magic.
You feel back to yourself,
But years ago,
Yeah,
she
like to
was
your
on
old
that.
self.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it
In
worked,
a
and
medicine
she
that
wasn't
worked
back
years
on
ago may not work now. I mean, we could do. We
So
gotta
many
be
different
Yeah.
things.
cognizant of everyone's time.
the
but
time, yeah.
medicine. There's so
Well,
many different things. As
And
well.
it could be she's had some other life experiences
right.
Yeah.
that have caused
Well,
the
a lot.
anxiety
Yes,
about
we have
saying,
had
there
a
you go.
lot. But
So
then
you're
she wants
adding-
to shut down and not take her medicine. Like if I start discussing it, I'm stressed right now, I don't want to discuss it. So,
Yeah.
Why
I
don't you
guess
start
I'll
with just
there.
exercise and sleep?
Yeah. And we can visit some more and
Yeah.
try and come up with some other ideas. Like Natalie said, even about calling the reason why something different, trying different angles, right, or different people.
I mean,
and-
I'll tell you
and
that
stuff.
I didn't want to listen to my mom when she would say, you're being a real today. I would be like, okay, whatever. That's
Yeah,
on
that's
you.
mom.
That's
Yeah.
So I get that.
But then that can filter down to the kids too,
Mhm.
our kids.
Oh
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I'm sure it does. It is. And so it would be better for everybody. This handout that this is actually one of Jaylyn's where she works at Cedar Crest that I got from her at another event that we had done. And, but I thought it was, really relevant, and it lists some of the different types of anxiety diagnoses and disorders that people can encounter. So thought I would give that to you as well. Thank you.